This can't be another one of your games, Porter. Not after all of this. If it is, just find someone else, for fuck's sake. Sit. This conversation is going to be uncomfortable enough. There's no sense in being physically uncomfortable as well. Just sit. I recognize that I'm the last person you probably want to be talking to, even on the best of days. And from your perspective, this is anything but the best of days. But right now, I'm the only one in a position to give you the full story. And believe it or not, it's not such a bad day after all. How the hell do you figure? Alexander and Christopher Bennett are dead. I wasn't exactly a fan of either one of them, but now they're dead? On our watch. Alexander and Christopher are dead for many reasons. And for any and all of those reasons, they don't deserve your sympathy. The House of Bennett was actively supporting Close-Knit in all of their endeavors, including that cult's ties to the inversion event. What? How the hell do you know that? It's a known fact among the monarchs of the houses, and it's been a point of serious contention between them, as you might imagine, particularly when the Bennets started to attempt clandestine efforts to align other houses with Close-Knit as well. If that's a known fact among the monarchs, then how do you know about it? Remember when I said this would be an uncomfortable conversation? Just cut the shit and say it, because William told me. I imagine that you've been under the belief that I've been some outcast from the family for the last 4 years, toiling away in anonymity without so much as a phone call home to the old man. But I'm afraid not. What? Just talk. I don't even know where to start. Just keep going. I won't pretend that William was happy with me after you and I had a little spat. I assure you, he read me the riot act. But it wasn't a banishment in the way that you've believed. In the way that you've been made, or at least allowed to believe. But that was a convenient misdirection that allowed me to operate with less interference and suspicion. The greater populace didn't see me as an affiliated member of the House of Solaire anymore, and that opened doors that otherwise would have been barred, and it redirected suspicion that would have fallen on the house onto the individual. Efficacy at its finest. And you know how William values efficiency. I feel like I don't know much of anything about William right about now. I'm not trying to shatter your little world, Vincent. That would be unfair to the man who has spent so long constructing it around you. You do know William. A part of him. The parts he felt he could share with you. Those parts aren't a lie. But they aren't the whole picture. I leave it to him to explain where those lines are drawn in totality, but for tonight, you need to at least know the basics. So I'm going to tell you them, whether you like what you hear or not. William Solaire ordered me to kill Alexander Bennett and to pin it on his prince, Christopher. Meanwhile, He used the distraction of the summit to execute a favor for one of our vampire representatives on the ruling council. In return, they've used some interesting, if questionable, legal precedent to allow William to seize the lion's share of the Bennet's assets in the wake of their very timely demise. And so, in one fell swoop, the Bennets are now leaderless, penniless, and scattered to the wind. So, have you thought of a question yet? You killed Alexander? That is what I said, isn't it? How? Exactly how Monarch Bars said. I stabbed him with a blade coated in demon's blood and tore his head off. It had barely hit the ground before I showed up in the kitchen and started our little argument. Why? To make an alibi for us both, obviously. Not why did you start the fight, why did you kill him? Because William told me to. Do you need to get your hearing checked? How many facts am I going to have to repeat? Porter. The House of Bennet was both wealthy and influential. One of our only saving graces in that regard was that its two most senior members, its king and prince, were forever at odds on which of those avenues to employ to get what they wanted. But even in disagreement, they still managed to do an incredible amount of damage. Money funneling into close-knit pockets. Favors in the right places, making cases against them go away. Loosening regulations that would have curtailed them, turning away eyes that should have been firmly fixed on them. Close-knit is more than just a hate group. On some level, they had a hand in the inversion. They share responsibility for those lives lost. And Alexander and Christopher Bennet knew that. They were supporting the organization before it and afterward, and they planned to increase their support in the coming weeks. That could have been for comparatively innocuous reasons, or it could have been to help close-knit wind up for another quote-unquote blameless tragedy. William wasn't willing to wait for another 1,500 innocent lives to be ended to find out. So he acted through me. If William knew all of these things, if you knew all of this, why wouldn't you take it to the authorities? The department's a shit show, but they have no love for close-knit. I'm sure that they want any evidence they can get their hands on to finally shut them down once and for all. We don't have concrete evidence to bring them. We have hearsay, whispers in the dark, open secrets with no paper trail. The Bennets were careful. So you didn't have enough evidence to go to the department, but you had enough evidence to murder a king and prince, seize all of their assets, and risk starting a war between all the vampire houses. I did as my king commanded. William felt there was enough evidence. For what it's worth, I wholeheartedly agree with him, although I would have done it even if I didn't. And I think if you ask your friends in the Shore Pack, they'll agree as well, now that they've heard Alexander and Christopher firsthand. The Bennets chose the wrong friends, Vincent. Their choices killed, and were going to kill again. So, William chose to kill them first. And you'll notice that there was no outbreak of war. there was only quiet but obvious support from the other houses. Some of them on moral grounds, and the rest because it means one fewer house to compete with. When the Bennets sink, the water rises for us all, in one form or another. By that logic, all the rest of the monarchs know that it wasn't Christopher who killed Alexander at all. They might not know it was you specifically who did it, but they know that William was ultimately responsible for it. Exactly. What's the logic in that? Why be halfway across the country in the first place? Why not just be here at the summit if William's alibi is going to be meaningless anyway? It was only an alibi on the most surface of levels, for those who aren't in the know. The true reason William wasn't here was because the House of Solaire had to be in two places at once. He took on the risk of being the odd man out, acting out his part on his own, while we could have the support of one another to see our half through. But anyone who would suspect him won't care that he wasn't at the summit. They'll still blame him. But they won't be able to prove it. It's how the game is played, Vincent. Everyone knows he's responsible, but they can't take him to trial for it. So, he instills fear and respect in the right places, cements his position and his power without having to do any time. The way you win is by making sure everyone knows what you did, but can't do anything about it. All the clout, with none of the culpability. Preemptive murder is not the only form of justice for what happened. Perhaps not. But it is our form of justice. One you've employed yourself. That was different. Not so different as you might think. The line starts getting dangerously blurry when you look too close, Vincent. Hurt the wrong person, or hurt enough people, and you're done. We don't waste time on second chances. Is that fair? Depends on who you ask. But it's one of the realities of being a vampire. The blade that let you get your revenge cuts all. So that's what you are, then, huh? You're William's blade. You just kill who he tells you to, whether you agree with it or not. I am far more than that. But as far as you probably care, yes. I act at William's discretion. Sometimes that involves killing, sometimes it doesn't. I act in service of the House of Solaire and its interests, whatever form that takes. Good to know that I was inadvertently lying through my teeth then, when I said that the House of Solaire doesn't kill to get what they want. Petulance is unbecoming, Vincent. Sorry, I'm just gonna need a little time to wrap my head around the fact that my maker, a man I trusted, and who I thought trusted me, has been hiding the fact that his house is actually a glorified vigilante outfit with you as his hired gun. Oh, and don't tell me. Turns out Alexis is in on the whole thing too, isn't she? That's why she gets away with being a fucking monster half the time. Because she's useful. Because she knows how to kill William's problems without being caught too. Is that how you earn his trust? In this house, you prove you'll murder for him without asking any questions? Grow up. Gods above, stop trying to see everything in black and white. I'm not some blind killing machine, and William isn't an evil, mustache-twirling villain pulling the strings. The Bennets were fueling a bigoted megalith that was responsible for 1,000 deaths and was gearing up to cause even more. Did William also benefit directly from the house's collapse? Yes, because he's a pragmatist. But he did the right thing. He always does. You don't have to be comfortable with his methods, but don't disrespect the good that results from it. I don't disagree with the result. If they really did have a hand in the inversion, then good fucking riddance. I hope they burn. Then what is the problem? Everything I thought I knew about the people that I care about has been a lie. And before you say it, I get it. Okay, that's naive. That's stupid. The result is good, so who fucking cares whose feelings are hurt? I know. But it's a little hard to wrap my head around all of this out of nowhere. It is naive. But it's not stupid. I can hardly hold it against someone to act sheltered when they've been sheltered their entire life. Why? Why hasn't he ever told me any of this? I can only guess. I'll admit, finding out the circumstances of your turning made a lot of this make more sense. But he is the one to ask, not me. Just say it. Please. I meant it when I said that he sees me as a friend and you as a child. His child. He loves you, Vincent. He loves you enough to not want you to get your hands dirty. William has been shielding you your entire afterlife because he knows he never should have turned you. You are his biggest regret. And before you get weepy, that's not because of who you are or who you've become. It's because he knows that what he did to you was wrong. And he's spent all these years since trying to find the way to make up for it. There are ugly parts to being in a vampire house of as much stature as the Solairs. This little coup against the Bennets is hardly the first such act the Solairs have made, and I can assure you, it won't be the last. Until now, William has managed to keep those realities out of your sight. But now the jig is up, as it were. I thought this was some kind of test. Then he wanted to see if I could handle running the summit. If I could handle you. Perhaps in part it was. though I doubt he was testing what you might suspect. If it's any consolation as far as where I factor into William's plans for you, he specifically told me to play nice when I returned to Dahlia. Unfortunately, I'm much better at killing than I am at playing nice. But to your point, for it to be simply a test seems callous for William. I don't even know what he'd consider callous now. I suppose that's something you'll have to reevaluate for yourself. But if you want my 2 cents, for once, then it's this. William is not a saint, but he's a good man who does good things, even if the methods that get those results are sometimes questionable or unenviable. He gave me a new life, showed me kindness I'd never known, and more than I probably deserved. In return, I've sworn to use that life to help him, in what ways I can. Not in repayment, but because I believe in the things he does, and I'm happy to use my skills to see those things through. His care for you, for both of you, for me, for Sam, even Alexis, it's genuine. I believe that. How did you get here? I drove, obviously. Porter. We don't have time for the sordid story of my past right now. Suffice it to say, my life was unpleasant. My afterlife was worse. But after joining this house, it wasn't anymore. That's the story of Porter Solaire. Bad, worse, better. There are many reasons that you and I don't get on, Vincent. But I believe one of the most fundamental ones, at least in the beginning, was in our feelings toward being a vampire. You saw turning as a curse, an act done against your will that robbed you of choices, robbed you of your family, your friends, your future, your life as you knew it. I saw it as a way out, a way to finally take control of a life that, to that point, had been spent in others' cruel hands. My feelings toward it didn't start out that way, mind you. As I said, my afterlife was worse. My maker had barely been turned a year when he jumped me, forced me into an enclave of his making. I got nothing from him but constant invocation and pain. He didn't care about any of us. He wanted a gang at his beck and call. Turning had granted me incredible powers, but my circumstances denied me all agency of them. I was no better off than I'd been as a human. What changed? he finally turned someone who mattered. So the department hunted him down and locked him up. And I ran. I ran until I couldn't run anymore. And at the end of it all, I found myself on Solaire property. William took me in, cleaned me up, showed me the extent of my powers now that they were mine to command. Got me tutors to help me relearn my connection with magic. And I realized that I finally had the ability to make the new life for myself that I'd always wanted. On my terms. I saw my turning for what it was, now that I was free of my maker. A salvation. But that experience is not universal. I'm wise enough to know that now. I recognize that both of our feelings can be true. Your curse can be my blessing, and vice versa. I didn't have the perspective to realize that when we met. I didn't know any of that. There's much we don't know about one another, Vincent. It would do both of us well to remember that. When William gets back, speak with him. I'm sure you have plenty more questions that I'm in no place to answer. And much as I might love the sound of my own voice, frankly, I've done more than enough speaking for the evening. Good night, you two.